The doom-shaped call the destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands whereabouts. In color it was bright and fiery, in appearance changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling in a pool from an underground supply, and all men agree it was a most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a lucent star, being more like a fiery body of flame. Its movement on high was slow, below it swirled in the manner of smoke, and it remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. There was a bloody redness about it, which changed as it passed along its course. It caused death and destruction in its rising and setting. It swept the earth with gray cinder rain and caused many plagues, hunger, and other evils. It bit the skin of men and beasts until they became mottled with sores. The earth was troubled and shook. The hills and mountains moved and rocked. The dark, smoke-filled heavens bowed over earth, and a great howl came to the ears of men, borne to them upon the wings of the wind. It was the cry of the Dark Lord, the master of dread. Thick clouds of fiery smoke passed before him, and there was an awful hail of hot stones and coals of fire. The doom-shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightning. The channels of water were turned back unto themselves when the land tilted, and great trees were tossed about and snapped like twigs. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard over the wilderness, and before its burning breath the flames parted. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony, and bright arrows of blood sped back and forth across its face. The earth swelled up like bread upon the hearth. This was the aspect of the doom-shape called the destroyer when it appeared in the days long gone by, in olden times. It is thus described in the old records, few of which remain. It is said that when it appears in the heavens above, the earth splits open from the heat like a nut roasted before the fire. Then flames shoot up through the surface and leap about like fiery fiends upon black blood. The moisture inside the land is all dried up. The pastures and cultivated places are consumed in flames, and they and all trees become white ashes. The doom shape is like a circling ball of flame which scatters small fiery offspring in its train. It covers out a fifth part of the sky and sends writhing snake-like fingers down to earth. Before it, the sky appears frightened, and it breaks up and scatters away. Midday is no brighter than night. It spawns a host of terrible things. These are things said of the destroyer in the old records. Read them with a solemn heart, knowing that the doom shape has its appointed time and will return. It would be foolish to let them go unheeded. Now men say such things are not destined for our days. May the great God above grant that this be so, but come the day surely will, and in accordance with his nature, man will again be unprepared. That's from chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the Destroyer from the Kolbrin Bible. Part 3 from the Scroll of Adefa. So if you want to look it up for yourself, you can read it. But this is an old account of Nibiru and this particular other object, element, passing prior to the events of Moses' day when he led the people out of Egypt and the Red Sea was parted before him. And I did not have any idea that that Nibiru and Element were also part of that, and there's also reference to them being part of what had happened prior to the deluge of Noah's day. And so it's interesting to see that the Kolbrin attaches the same phenomena that we're dealing with in our heavens right now, because if you're not aware and if you haven't been notified of what's going on in our heavens, that the Lord said there will be signs in the heavens and the sun and the moon and the stars. Well, indeed, there are great signs and awesome things happening. There's, in fact, this comet element that is crossing the path of, and is crossing in front of us and will cross in front of our orbit, the Earth's orbit, right before we actually cross over what would be the best trail of element. And I know that our brother John the Baptist of Tribulation-Now.org, he's done a wonderful job in bringing you the timeline. He's done a lot of really good shows in bringing forth a lot of this information. But what is interesting in that, what is being talked about in the historical account is that the phenomena that we're dealing with is in fact a dual phenomenon, and that when element passes in front of us, that there could be another object trailing behind. And if that is the case, and that's what nobody is talking about, if no one is expecting, then there could be even more serious consequences than just going through the debris field of what would be comet element. Because supposedly Nibiru is larger and also has moons with it. So who knows? But I want to introduce, I have a guest tonight, Roman White. He's a friend of ours, and he has his own radio show at libertyradio.com, and he does a show called The Seeds of Evil. I believe that's Roman, go ahead and give a shout-out to the listening audience, and if you'll announce your show and tell people where they can find your work, and then we'll get into this topic.
Well, it's on truthradio.com. Sunday night at 8 Central to 9:30, hour and a half show.
All right, well, wonderful. Well, Roman and I have been introduced to each other because the Lord has kind of blessed us in the same discernment with the whole, what had happened in the garden and the connection with Cain and Lucifer and the whole enmity, Genesis chapter 3:15, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. He will actually be joining us as a guest for a 2-hour show in not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. And so we'll be going into some of those issues. But it's important for us this evening to bring forth the information that I'm going to be covering because I know just recently on Coast to Coast Radio, Linda Moulton Howe was on, and she was talking about several interviews that she had with NASA scientists that are just kind of blowing this whole thing off as, nothing to it, and that there's really no. And I pray that there is no cause for concern. I don't want to see, us having to go through anything traumatic, especially because so many, in my opinion, you probably agree with me, Roman, they're not ready. They're not ready to meet their Maker. They're not ready for the harvest and salvation and judgment and all that entails. Because those are some very serious and heavy-duty issues, and most people are still in denial about the state of America and our financial standing and our ability to even pay our own bills. I mean, the day of reckoning is coming in so many ways. But what we're dealing with in the heavens, with this being of a cosmic nature, this affects us all very profoundly, no matter where we live or which part of the country, which part of the world you're listening to and tuning in from. Excuse me. And nobody's speaking about the possibility that something could be trailing elements. And what is interesting to me also is the discovery of the blue star, red star, Hopi prophecy. And for those that have not heard of this, or we're going to read it for you, and I'm going to get Roman to comment on it, because this is a very interesting prophecy. And just to give you a little bit of background on it, It was actually brought forth by a Robert Morningside Ghostworth, I believe is his name, and he had come on Art Bell's program, and I think this was in 1998, and this was also after the publication of his book called Last Cry. And in that book, he published this particular prophecy that we're going to bring forth because it talks about this phenomena as being, something of a dual nature again. And it talks about the terrible twins, one being the purifier, and interestingly enough, the other being the destroyer, which is exactly what the Kolbrin Bible references this particular object as well. And I also have been recently, I sent out a quote that I read earlier from the Kolbrin Bible about the destruction of the First World Age, where I read a quote about the sky monster, one following closely after the other, so close enough that it could swallow the tail of the one before it. And that is, citing the same thing, a dual nature phenomenon. And I want to make mention of this too, because our brother John is also doing a show, and he's actually praying for people that are worried about, that maybe aren't necessarily right with the Lord in such a way that they have, complete faith in whatever might occur and whatever might happen, and have no worries about, what's coming. Even if we are concerned for our children, whether we're not concerned for ourselves or not, but there's still our loved ones and so many of our fellow citizens and world citizens and just, citizens of this country and our neighborhoods and communities that are not ready and are not prepared for any of this, not martial law, anything cosmic or anything New World Order. I mean, most people still have their heads in the sand and haven't woke up to any of these things, but I can definitely sense that people are getting a sense of urgency and are starting to realize that something's not right, and so are taking steps and measures to implement something, whatever it may be, even if it's just putting away a little food or a little water, or, whatever it is. We're being lied to on so many levels. We still don't even know what's going on in Japan, and that is a complete tragedy. I've heard that Tokyo is going to have to be abandoned completely, and they're talking about the capital city, and they're talking about that the whole northern half of the island of Japan is going to have to be abandoned, and that the nuclear core of reactor 2 has now, dissipated all the way through the floor of the reactor, and they don't even know how to contain it or how to stop it. And so there's so much going on. And I just read recently again that the Deepwater Horizon, the oil leak, that it's leaking again. We're facing so much. But anyways, we need to be prepared, and what's important, the most important thing about that, rather than gathering up provisions and, is getting right with the Lord and having His seal of protection on you. Because that is what is important. Even as Israel learned when they were taken into the wilderness and they had all those provisions from Egypt, and they had an abundance for a while, but after 40 years of wandering, they had to rely on the Lord, and the Lord fed them, manna from heaven. The shoes that they wore for those 40 years did not even wear out. And He preserved them in completeness. And so that's the kind of relationship I would hope for you with the Father and with the Son, so that no matter what's coming and no matter what happens, that you from this moment forward can be ready for all things, because we are not promised any more tomorrows. We are not promised that we're going to wake up tomorrow, next day, or any other day. And so,
have you seen any pictures? Yeah, have you seen any pictures of the destroyer coming in?
Yeah, I have. I've actually seen videos as well, but what is interesting to me is, now that you mentioned this, is that John just sent me a picture from a lady, and it actually, in that picture, it shows this blue and red star, blue Kachina, red Kachina phenomenon. So you want to make a comment on that, Roman?
There is a website that you can go to that's got a whole bunch of pictures that are taken from telescopes of this thing coming in. It's thelightgate.com. Stuart Best is the one that has that up. But he's got just a raft of pictures on it, and he's also got that Elenon. He's got charts up there that show how they're going to come in to the solar system and cross the dates when we'll go through the tail of each one. And I believe there's actually 3 of them. There's that Elenon, and then there's another one. And one of the pictures that he's got on there, the Kolbrin talks about it being a planet with horns, and you can actually see what appears to be horns on this thing.
Right, it looks like a winged disc, much like the depiction that the Sumerians, they depict this particular planet as a winged disc, and so it gives it that kind of horn-looking shape. And yeah, I've seen a recent video also of that particular phenomenon. Just so you know, those of you that are in the chat room that are tuning in through the internet, I did paste links. The first link is a connection to a video that will show you the position of the Earth and the inner planet in conjunction with the movement of this particular element phenomenon, as well as 2 other comets that are being tracked, Honda and Levy, which those particular comets are also interacting with the Earth, and one it tells us actually closely sometime in November. So even though this element is supposed to interact with us up until October 16th, and it's after that particular time that it's supposed to have passed us, and then very shortly after that we are supposed to pass through its trail and then continue on in our orbit, which then would be at a point of safety. So we will see what's going on with that. I'm going to read from the Hopi artifact, this blue star, red star Kachina prophecy, so that you can get an idea for what these Native Americans, the Hopi elders, have talked about. And again, this is from Dr. Robert Gatesworth. He was on Art Bell's show, and it says this. And then we're going to break this down piece by piece, and I'm going to give you a chance to comment as we go. The story of the Blue Kachina is a very old story, very old. I have been aware of the story of the Blue Kachina since I was very young. I was told the story by grandfathers who are now between 80 and 108 years of age. Frank Waters also wrote about Sakosua, the Blue Star Kachina, in the Book of the Hopi. The story came from Grandfather Dan, the oldest Hopi member of the tribe. It was told to me that first the Blue Kachina would start to be seen at the dances and would make his appearance known to the children in the plaza during the night dance. This event would tell us that the end times are very near. Then the Blue Star Kachina would physically appear in our heavens, which would mean that we were in the end times. In the final days, we will look up in our heavens, and we will witness the return of the 2 brothers. Pay attention to that. They call them the twins. Very important. Same phenomenon, in my opinion. I'll explain this to you because it says, witness the return of the 2 brothers who helped create this world in the birthing time. What most don't know, if you haven't studied the ancient like Babylonian epic creation tale, or the Enuma Elish, or read from the Sumerian teachings, and even the descriptions of Marduk creating the solar system, that Nibiru, in fact, did have part to play in the creation of this planet, our modern-day Earth. That it was a war a long time ago between Nibiru and what was then called the planet Tiamat. That Tiamat was a big watery planet that was then located where our current asteroid belt is. and that Nibiru, at one time when it was first captured by the net force, or what is called the gravitational field of the outer planets, the larger gaseous planets, that it was captured and became a member of the solar system. That in that initial capturing on its first orbit, one of the moons of Nibiru actually came into conflict with Tiamat and struck it and split it asunder. Split Tiamat into two pieces, which on the next orbit of Nibiru through our solar system, it shifted the carcass of Tiamat from where it was in orbit at the asteroid belt, from the fifth orbit outside of the planet Mars, to then inside of the planet Mars, or the third orbit from the Sun, and at the perfect distance necessary to then harbor the multiplication and the abundance of life on this planet as we now know it. And that's why the Anume Elish and all these other epic creation tales, they celebrate that cataclysm and that war, the war, they call it, between the Lord of Hosts and the dragon, that is what actually happened. It was a cataclysmic, cosmic cataclysm that happened in our solar system that resulted in the birth of the new Earth and the capture of what was termed as Kingu, or our new moon. And the moon also became at the perfect distance to then, create lunar and solar eclipses, which are also signs that the Lord has placed into the heavens, as witness to not only to the angels, but also to humanity of those things that he did prior in the early history of our solar system. So, continuing on, it says this. Haganogawa is the guardian of our North Pole, and his brother Palangarawa is the guardian of the South Pole. In the final days, the blue star Kachina will come to grief with his nephews, and they will return to the earth. They will return the earth to its natural rotation, which is counterclockwise. That's kind of interesting to me as well, because we know that in the days of Noah, there was a pole shift, and the Book of Enoch even described, and even Isaiah, Genesis chapter 24 gives a description of the tilting of the earth. Robert, I'm going to go ahead and get your comment here while I get a sip of water. Hey, Brandy.
That actually they found that, if I'm not mistaken, sometime in the 80s. There was a little blurb about it, and then everything kind of shut off. And it's interesting that all of the nations of the earth have, for their elite, they've dug down and they've made all kinds of 5-star motels, you might call them, underneath the planet, complete with tubes that go back and forth between these things. They've done a massive amount of under the earth excavation for their elite. And the rest of us, I guess, they're going to leave to fend up here for ourselves. But I think what's going to happen is that they're going to find that they've dug their own tombs.
I want to ask the listening audience and to the people in the chat room if you guys can hear me clearly. Because no one is saying that I'm coming out unclear and muffled, and so I want to check to make sure that we're coming through clear. If somebody will give a shout out in the chat room. I apologize. I'm kind of losing my voice too. So, excuse me. Now, and this is really important information, so I'm hoping everybody can hear me clearly. Check in and then let me know. Okay. Okay, they're saying no, it's not clear. I don't know what to do here. Let me check one thing. I'm going to actually call in again real quick. Roman, I'm going to call in again real quick and see if I get a better connection. I'm going to pick you up again in about 1 minute. All right, brother?
Are you going to call me, or you want me to call back in?
No, you'll have to call back in. I'm going to disconnect for about 30 seconds, everybody, and see if I can get a better connection. Bear with me just a minute. All right. I hope everybody can hear me better. Can you give me a shout out again in the chat room, whether you can hear me clear or not? And then if you can, then we'll pick up Roman and get this show going again. I apologize because this information is so important. I wanted to be definitely clear. I know you guys are a couple minutes behind me, so when you catch up, if you'll give me a shout out, whether it sounds better. Okay, great. All right, they're saying that the sound is better, so hopefully everybody out there is hearing me clear. We're going to go ahead and bring Roman on again with us. Brother Roman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
I think you have a better connection.
Okay, wonderful. I apologize that I didn't pick up on that earlier. I'm going to go ahead and pick up. Wonderful. Yeah, they're saying it's clear. So I apologize for the mumbled, the bad connection earlier. And thanks for informing everybody in the chat room. I'm gonna back up just a little bit again then, and start again at the beginning of this, because we just now got into this particular Hopi prophecy about the blue star, red star, and the Kachina. And as Roman was mentioning earlier, and I know you guys could hear him clear, you can go to Stuart Best's website, whitegate.com, and he'll give you, there's actual, photos and videos and all that there to verify that this phenomenon is in fact real and it's happening. There's a JPL and NASA timeline that describes exactly day by day when this, when they're closest to the Earth, when it crosses the path of the Earth, and when actually the Earth passes the path of Eleanor. And so we'll talk about that afterwards. But I want to cover this prophecy first because I find it so very relevant for our time, and for those that haven't heard it, it's going to blow you away. And again, this is from a Dr. Robert Ghostwolf, and he was on Art Bell's show. He published a book called The Last Cry, and in that book, this particular prophecy came to publication. It says this: the story of the Blue Kachina is a very old story, very old. I have been aware of the story of the Blue Kachina since I was very young. I was told this story by grandfathers who are now between 80 and 108 years of age. Frank Waters also wrote about the Sasquatch, the Blue Star Kachina, in the Book of the Hopi. The story came from Grandfather Dan, the oldest Hopi. All right, we're going into the prophecy. It was told to me that first the Blue Kachina would start to be seen at the dances and would make his appearance known to the children in the plaza during the night dance. This event would tell us that the end times are very near. Then the Blue Star Kachina would physically appear in our heavens, which would mean that we were in the end times. In the final days, we will look up in our heavens and we will witness the return of the two brothers who helped create this world in the birthing time. And for those, I just explained how Nibiru had, in fact, been responsible for the creation of our earth long ago, as described by the Babylonian epics of the Enuma Elish and several others that talk about Nibiru, one of its moons, striking Tiamat, splitting it asunder, and then moving it on its next orbit to the orbit, the third orbit, or inside of Mars, when it used to be where the asteroid belt now is. In fact, the asteroid belt is a remnant, remnant of that collision, that cataclysm that happened so long ago. And it was, in fact, that particular impact that moved the Earth to the location where it is now, making this planet, putting it at the perfect distance to then harbor life. And it was at that time that life on this particular planet began in abundance. All right, I'm going to continue on. In the final days, the Blue Star Kachina will come to be with us, with his nephews, and they will return to the Earth to its natural rotation, which is counterclockwise. The fact is evidenced in many petroglyphs that speak of the zodiac, and within the Mayan and Egyptian pyramids, the rotation of the Earth has been manipulated by not so benevolent star beings. That's pretty interesting too. The rotation of the Earth has been manipulated by not so benevolent star beings. The twins will be seen in our northwestern skies, which is interesting because that's where they're coming from. They will come and visit to see Who still remember the original teachings flying in their paragobatos, or flying shields? That's really interesting too. They will come and visit to see who still remember the original teachings flying in their flying shields. They will bring many of their star families with them in the final days. The return of the blue star Kachina, who is also known as Nandan Sohu, will be the alarm clock that tells us of the new day and new way of life, a new world that is coming. This is where the changes will begin. They will start as fires that burn within us, and we will burn up with desires and conflict if we do not remember the original teaching and return to a peaceful way of life. Not far behind the twins will come the purifier, the red Kachina, who will bring the day of purification. On this day, the earth, her creatures, and all life as we know it will change forever. There will be messengers that will precede this coming of the purifier. They will leave messages to those on earth who remember the old ways. The messages will be found written in the living stone through the sacred grains and even the waters. From the purifier will issue forth a great red light. All things will change in their manner of being. Every living thing will be offered the opportunity to change from the largest to the smallest thing. Those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings and live a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build a new world. Only in the ancient teachings will the ability to understand the messages be found. It is important to understand that these messages will be found upon every living thing, even within our bodies, even within a drop of our blood. All life forms will receive the messages from the twins. Those that fly, the plants, and even the rabbit. The appearance of the twins begins a period of 7 years will be our final opportunity to change our ways. Everything we experience is all a matter of choice. Many will appear to have lost their souls in these final days. So intense will the nature of the changes be that those who are weak in spiritual awareness will go insane. For we are nothing without spirit. They will disappear, for they are just hollow vessels for anything to use. Life will be so bad in the cities that many will choose to leave this plane, some in whole groups. Only those who return to the values of the old ways will be able to find peace of mind. For in the earth we shall find relief from the madness that will be all around us. It will be a very hard time for women with children, for they will be shunned, and many of the children in these times will be unnatural, some being from the stars, some from past worlds, some will even be created by man in an unnatural manner, and will be soulless. Many of people in this time will be empty in spirit. They will have sampaku, no life force, in their eyes. I want to stop here for just a second and read this again real quick. It says that, for in the earth we shall find relief from the madness that will be all around us. It will be a very hard time for women with children, for they will be shunned, and many of the children in these times will be unnatural, some being from the stars, some from past worlds. Some will even be created by man in an unnatural manner and soulless. We know, like the island of Dr. Moreau, that in these deep underground bases, and in topside, in these laboratories, in different locations in the world, in different countries, that there is massive genetic hybridization going on where humans and plants and animals, the DNA, the genetic experimentation that's going on, they're being crossbred. all of them are being crossbred in horrific kind of manners. And so this right here is also a verification of the last days, because we know that it was during the time prior to even the creation of modern humanity, and also during the time of prior to Noah and the flood, that the fallen angels were interdicting themselves into the affairs of this world, and that they had created all sorts of hybrid monstrosities and hybrid creatures, and that they were even responsible for marrying the daughters of man and bringing forth a creation of hybrid giants. Let me go ahead and get you to comment here, Roman.
Being on the giants,
Well,
some of those were
the giants,
up to 34 foot tall. If you look
Right.
at the account in the Bible where the spies went in, and whenever they came out, the scripture says that they had a cluster of grapes. And this cluster of grapes was so big that they had to carry it on a pole between two men. I can go down to the grocery store and buy a cluster of grapes, take it out in one hand. But these must have been huge grapes, about the size of cantaloupes, for two men to carry them out on a pole. And of course, if there were giants in the land, well, they needed grapes that size. Something that's 34, 36 feet tall. The little grapes like you and I eat today wouldn't be very much, but a grape the size of a cantaloupe would be about the equivalent size. And I would suggest to you that the only way that those things were made was through some type of genetic manipulation. I also find an account when the children of Israel went into the Promised Land and they actually conquered it. But there were certain cities where these giant hybridization was going on, that the entire city was everything in it was killed. Men, women, children, dogs, cats, everything. And the place was burned to the ground, and they weren't allowed to take any booty out of it. And yet there are other cities that they went in and conquered. They took people into slavery. They took all of the cattle and booty out of it. So there was a distinction made there as to which cities would just be absolutely leveled and obliterated as if they never were, and other cities left intact. And the only reason I can figure out for that is that those cities were engaging in hybridization. They were wrecking the earth. And that's what we're doing today.
Absolutely, and that's why the Lord said in Matthew chapter 24, Luke 21, that as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of right. So we're seeing things being repeated.
We've just gotten back to the technology that these people had, thousands of years ago. They certainly had it before the flood, and I even think a certain amount of it came over and they had it after the flood.
Right.
They had a more advanced culture there than we do today. As a matter of fact, all your old tales of Atlantis, I believe, are nothing more than what was here before the flood of Noah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What most people don't realize is that the Anunnaki, the fallen angels, they were here before even the modern creation of humanity. And that the Lord brought us, modern humanity, into being to serve as a condemnation against them, and also as retribution of redemption for us, because he would save us and salvage us. He came to rescue us. That was the whole reason. Go ahead, brother.
Then, did you know that the Anunnaki are mentioned in the Bible, in the Scripture?
Yeah.
You remember when the spies went in, they said that they were these were the children of Enoch.
Right.
That Enoch is just another name for the Anunnaki.
Exactly. That's the same phenomenon. So for those that are new to Scripture, it is the same thing. In Ecclesiastes, it says there's nothing new under the sun. It's very, very true. We're going to continue on with this prophecy. I also want to go into some aspects of Revelation as well. And I also want to read further accounts of what happened when Nibiru came into contact with Earth in our previous history from the ancient records, just so you get an idea for the kind of phenomenon that we're talking about and that we could possibly experience, just like the Earth experienced previously. So, it says this: after the arrival of the twins, they will begin to vanish before your eyes like so much smoke. Oh, I'm sorry, I passed one paragraph up, but this is important. So, as we get close to the time of the arrival of the purifier, there will be those who walk as ghosts through the city, through canyons. Through canyons, they excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Through canyons they will have constructed in their man-made mountains. Those that walk through these places will be very heavy in their walk. It will appear almost painful as they take each step, for they will be disconnected from their spirit and the earth. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. All right. I apologize. After the arrival of the twins, they will begin to vanish before your eyes like so much smoke. Others will have great deformities, both in the mind and upon their bodies. There will be those who would walk in the body that are not from this reality. For many of the gateways that once protected us will be opened. There will be much confusion between sexes and children and their elders. Real important sentence. There will be those who walk in the body that are not from this reality. For many of the gateways that once protected us will be opened. And I may mention many years ago that we would be witness to some of the most strangest phenomena and spiritual weirdness, unlike since the days of Noah. As Ephesians 6 talks about powers and principalities and the rulers of darkness not of this world. It's the same kind of thing. We are all going to be experiencing a phenomenon that we are not going to be readily able to explain, especially for those that don't understand the spiritual nature of the war in the world that we're living in. Because this world, believe me, is not just about 9 to 5 and corporate reality and working for money and supporting a life of materialism. That's not the real world and real reality of what's going on and what this is all about, according to God's laws and commandments. So, life will get very perverted, and there will be little social order in these times. Many will ask for the mountains themselves to fall upon them, just to end their misery. Does that not sound like Revelation 6? We're going to be going into that here pretty soon, and you'll see the connections there. Still, others will appear as if untouched by what is occurring. The ones who remember the original teachings and have reconnected their heart and spirit. Those who remember who their mother and father is, the Prahana, who have left to live in the mountains and forests. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which you're seeing this, people. They're reporting it all over the world, which will come very close and sit in our heavens, watching us. I also want to make mention that this particular planet element, that it's coming again from the northwest, and it crosses over our orbital position and then continues on towards the interior of the Earth, crosses near Mercury, and then starts to come out again, and then crosses the orbit of Venus, and then October 16th it's supposed to cross the orbit of the Earth again as it's on its way out. And so this also makes perfect sense in what it's saying. Watching us to see how well we have remembered this sacred teaching. This purifier will show us many miraculous signs in our heavens. In this way we will know Creator is not a dream. Even those who do not feel their connection to Spirit will see the face of Creator across the sky. Things unseen will be felt very strongly. Many things will begin to occur that will not make sense, for reality will be shifting back in and out of the dream state. There will be many doorways to the lower world that will open at this time. Things long forgotten will come back to remind us of our past creations. All living things will want to be present for this day when time ends, and we enter the forever cycle of the fifth world. We're almost done here. We will receive many warnings allowing us to change our ways from below the earth as well as above. Then one morning, in a moment, we will awake to the red dawn. This is important too, and I'm going to cover this with the Kolbrin, because this is also a sign in the Bible. The sky will be the color of blood. Many things will then begin to happen that right now we are not sure of their exact nature. For much of reality will not be as it is now. There will be many strange beasts upon the earth in those days, some from the past and some that we have never seen. The nature of mankind will appear strange in these times. We will walk between worlds and we will house many spirits, even within our bodies. After a time, we will again walk with our brothers from the stars and rebuild this earth, but not until the purifier has left his mark upon the universe. I got to read that again, too. This is important. And I'm actually going to stop after this, get Roman to comment. There will be many strange beasts upon the earth in those days, some from the past and some that we have never seen. The nature of mankind will appear strange in these times. We will walk between worlds and we will house many spirits, even within our own bodies. Everybody's read Joel chapter 2, Locust Army, Revelation 9, anybody? Roman?
Revelation 9, rather than give me a verse, start a little bit of what it says. I'm not familiar exactly with what you're talking about without going and looking it up.
Let me go to that. Let me read this particular passage, and then I'll go to that, and then we'll talk about this. Because this blood red dust that comes from this comet has an important part to play in the prophecies. And I'll explain this with both not only Revelation and the Word from our Lord, but also in the ancient accounts and the references in the Kolbrin Bible. No thing living will go untouched here or in the heavens. The way through this time, it is said, is to be found in our hearts and reuniting with our spiritual self. Getting simple and returning to living with and upon the earth and in harmony with her creatures. Remembering that we are the caretakers, the fire keepers of the Spirit. Our relatives from the stars are coming home to see how well we have fared in our journey. All right. Now remember the blood red dust. We're going to go to Revelation first, because let me pull it up. All right. Now I'm going to actually start at Revelation 6, and then we're going to get to this other aspect. Because it says this. And I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely fig, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondsman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now remember, in this particular Hopi prophecy that I just read, that it talks about the rich men or the people being in the earth and asking for the rocks to fall on it. That is a connection to Revelation 6. Go ahead, Robert.
You know, if you had a pole shift in the earth, simply turned over, north became south and south became north. If that happened rapidly, you would see the atmosphere as it tried to catch up with the earth, and it would appear as though the heavens were rolled together like a scroll. That would actually be, they theorized that what happened to the mammoths up in Siberia that were frozen with buttercups in their mouth, that's what happened, that the tremendously cold air from up above just gushed down and froze those mammoths almost instantaneously because the cold was so intense. In other words, it was a pole shift. That's happened before on the planet. Some of the old texts talk about the sun used to rise in the east, set in the west, or I'm sorry, rise in the west, set in the east. Also there's the magma that comes out in the way the magnetic field in it. The scientists tell us that we've had pole shifts before, and it could very well what that could be talking about, where the heavens roll up like a scroll. Some of the stuff that you read about, you wonder how anything at all could survive on this planet, and yet I find it interesting that in the Kolbrin over there it talks about the slaves, which would be the children of Israel, that they were out in the swamps and they were untouched by what was going on. So God obviously protected them, whereas the Egyptians were going through all of these various and sundry things that they describe. And the description that the Egyptians give is a lot more vivid than what's in the King James Bible that we read about.
It's a pretty amazing account, isn't it? And we're from that. That's a very amazing account, isn't it? The descriptive, the way, it's very vivid and very descriptive. And we'll touch on that as well. But I want to go through, I want to associate all these events and these happenings to the Word so that you can understand how prophecy ties into all of these things that we're talking about. And so,
I want to ask you one other thing. Have you read any of the Veda texts from India, where it talks about the behemoths and the gods firing missiles and their flying machines at each other, and the elephants catching on fire and running into the forest and setting the forest on fire, and talks about people that were an army that came and they washed themselves off the dust. They washed the dust off of themselves to keep from getting sick, and this dust came down and settled on foods and poisoned it. Have you read any of that?
Yeah, I have. I haven't read all of those ancient Hindu accounts. In fact, that's something I do want to go into. But the Sumerian teaching state. Go ahead.
It's a vivid description of a nuclear. I mean, when you read that, it's describing perfectly a nuclear event, and yet this happened thousands and thousands of years ago. But somebody had to see that to be able to write it down. You don't just make something like that up. It talks about their hair falling out, their fingernails falling off. I mean, there's nothing else that it could be talking about other than a war with nuclear weapons.
Right. And in fact, the Sumerian teachings also talked about this war, that there was a war between two factions of these Anunnaki, the Enlarites and the Enkiites, and that was part responsible for how Sumer was wiped out. They talk about an evil wind that after use of these nuclear weapons, that an evil wind, a radioactive cloud, pushed forth through all the different cities and emptied out what was in old Sumer. So it talks about that as well. But I'm going to continue on with Revelation because I do want to get into that account that Roman was telling you about in the Kolbrin, and I do believe that the accounts in the Kolbrin are just so very detailed, so very descriptive. It'll give you an idea for the phenomenon that we're talking about and what we could be facing. Again, this timeline, this particular comment, will be affecting the Earth up until the late October, early November. So if we can get to that period, we should be good. But this is the kind of stuff that we could be seeing. And this could be any day now. And so just be wary, people. Be wary. And be ready at all times because you don't know what we're going to be facing in these strange times. It says this, and after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. This, I'm going to skip a little bit, but right here, this seventh seal, the chapter 7, talks about the Lord, going out and sealing his own. And you want the Lord's protection in these times, these strange times that are coming. And continuing on, it says this, And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burdened with fire was cast into the sea. And a third part of the sea became blood. Okay, now pay attention here, people. This is really important. Okay, a third part of the sea became blood, right? And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so as a third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Remember we talked about the impact of all these comets, putting up enough debris so that it blocks out the sun, makes the moon blood red. And I beheld, and we heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Why does he say woe, woe, woe here? This is very important, okay? Why does he say it? Because the locust army is about to be released from the pit. Okay, the locust army. Remember John was talking about Daniel 9:27? On the wings of a detestable army. You know, that whole thing about this possible alien invasion, the fallen angel returning, and we just read in the Hopi about all this weirdness and strange things being released on the earth in these last days. Listen, Revelation 9. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. These locusts are mentioned in Joel chapter 2, where they talk about how they march and how they can't be killed, how they climb up the walls and enter through the windows. And so you have to read that. It talks about how they have hair as of women, and that they, well, I'll just read it because there's a description here too. And they came out of those locusts, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. See that the locust army will be loosed to decimate those that are not sealed by God and that are not written into the book of life. Yep. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Now this is the shape of the locusts, okay? And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces as the faces of men. They had the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women. And their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots and many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. And we know him to be the leader of the fallen angels, the head of the Greek, Roman, Hindu, multiple pantheon of gods. Then we know him as Lucifer, Satan the adversary, the fallen one of Isaiah chapter 14, and Ezekiel chapter 28. Now, continue on, and I'm going to get you to comment here too. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. It says, loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels which were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month, and a number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them having breastplate of fire, and mouths issued forth fire and smoke and brimstone. See, these creatures can breathe fire. By these 3, this is important, by these 3 was the 3rd part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails are like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And so this, to me, in my opinion, is a depiction of these things, whatever the locust army that is loosed. Whether it's this particular go-round, I don't know. But at some point, we are going to have these things to deal with on this planet. We got about 16 minutes, brother. I want to give you a chance to comment here. Brother, you there? We might have lost. Okay, he's calling in again. Reverend, you there, brother? Yes. Apologize, I was reading. Did you hear what I was reading there?
Yes, I did.
Do you want to comment on that?
Frankly, I don't have an interpretation for that.
Yeah.
I've often wondered exactly what that's describing. I've heard people say that, well, those are helicopters. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't have a clue what that is. There's not anything. We may not know until we see it what it is. If it is in fact, if it's not symbolic. I do know this.
Right.
It's a period of time for locusts. There's a month that they start, and there's a month that they finish, and it is indeed 5 months.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, and we're not going to know until that time, but it's definitely an interesting depiction in that these creatures, look like men, but are not, and
that's part of Revelation. I don't think anybody can figure out.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those parts, we're not going to know until the Lord reveals things to us. Now, in the last 15 minutes here, I want to cover this red dust, because this red dust has part to play in the end time scenario as well. And in the Kolbrin, it gives mention about Nibiru and Elenin, these sky monsters, when they pass us, how this particular red dust came from the sky and how it turned the river's blood red and the water's blood red, and how, in the Bible it talks about how the Lord will make them drink blood, that he'll turn the water's blood and make them drink blood, and that's one of his signs also. So I want to read this quote as well. And this, again, is from the Kolbrin Bible, and it says this: dust and smoke clouds darkened the sky and colored the waters upon which they fell with a bloody hue. Plague was throughout the land. The river was bloody, and blood was everywhere. The water was vile, and men's stomachs shrank from drinking. Those who did drink from the river vomited it up, for it was polluted. The dust tore wounds in the skin of man and beast. In the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. Vermin bred and filled the air and face of the earth with loathsomeness. Wild beasts afflicted with torments under the lashing sand and ashes came out of their lairs in the wastelands and cave places and stalked the abodes of men. All the tame beasts whimpered, and the land was filled with the cries of sheep and the moans of cattle. Trees throughout the land were destroyed, and no herb or fruit was to be found. The face of the land was battered and devastated by a hail of stones, which smashed down all that stood in the path of the torrent. They swept down in hot showers, and strange flowing fire ran along the ground in their wake. The fish of the river died in the polluted waters. Worms and insects and reptiles sprang up from the earth in huge numbers. Great gusts of wind brought swarms of locusts which covered the sky. As the destroyer flung itself through the heavens, it blew great gusts of cinders across the face of the land. The gloom of the long night spread a dark mantle of blackness which extinguished every ray of light. None knew when it was day and when it was night, for the sun cast no shadow. The darkness was not the clean blackness of night, but a thick darkness in which the breath of men was stopped in their throats. Men gasped in a hot cloud of vapor which enveloped all the land and snuffed out all the lamps and fires. Men were benumbed and lay moaning in their beds, then spoke to another or cooked food, for they were overwhelmed in despair. Ships were sucked away from their moorings and destroyed in great whirlpools. It was a time of undoing. The earth turned over as clay spun on a potter's wheel. The whole land was filled with uproar from the thunder of the destroyer overhead and the cry of the people. On the great night of the destroyer's wrath, when its terror was at its height, there was a hail of rocks, and the earth heaved as pain rent her bowels. Gates, columns, and walls were consumed by fire, and the statues of God were overthrown and broken. People fled outside their dwellings in fear and were slain by the hail. Those who took shelter from the hail were swallowed when the earth split open. The habitations of men collapsed upon those inside, and there was panic on every hand. But the slaves who lived in huts in the reed lands at the place of pits were spared. This is talking about the Hebrew people. We're about to get into the account of the Red Sea crossing and all that. The land burnt like tinder. A man watched upon his rooftops, and the heavens hurled wrath upon him, and he died. The land writhed under the wrath of the destroyer and groaned with the agony of Egypt. It shook itself, and the temples and palaces of the nobles were thrown down from their foundations. The highborn ones perished in the midst of the ruins, and all the strength of the land was stricken. Even the great one, the firstborn of Pharaoh, died. With the highborn in the midst of terror and falling stones, the children of princes were cast out into the streets, and those who were not cast out died within their abodes. There were 9 days of darkness and upheaval, while a tempest raged such as never had been known before. When it passed away, brother buried brother throughout the land. Men rose up against those in authority and fled from the cities to dwell in tents in the outland. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap this up with final comments, Roman. And if you just kind of, summarize where you feel we are in these critical times.
There was part of that you were reading that reminded me of something. The gravitational or magnetic fields of the Earth protect us to a large degree from the rays of the sun. And they say that the gravitational or electromagnetic field has been collapsing. It's way, way, way down and going down every year. And there's certain types of rays that the sun puts out, and I'm told that if those rays are not blocked by something and they hit vegetation, the vegetation will just die in about maybe 5-10 minutes, and it turns white, which is what you were reading there.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in the 1800s they had a CME release that was so powerful. If it happened today, it would, the grid would just be toast. But it was so powerful that telegraph operators, their papers on their desks caught on fire, and railroad ties actually caught a fire because of the sun, the explosion that it put out. Like I say, if that happened today, imagine that happening and there being no protective magnetic field up there, and we caught the full brunt of that. It would be devastating.
Yeah, absolutely, it would be.
They claim too that grid, if the grid ever goes down from that type of ejection from the sun, that all of these transformers and stuff out here that we have, that they'll be fused, they'll be melted together. And without any electricity, it could take up to 200 years to put that back together again and have a grid that works like our grid does today.
Yeah, and our grid is already falling apart. So, yeah, all it would take is something like that, massive coronal ejection or even an EMP.
The elite, the elite, they don't care. They know that this is coming, and they're not trying to fix any of it. Actually, the Congress appropriated money to so many millions or billions of dollars to protect the grid from that, and the Senate canceled that. So they really don't care. They don't expect anything to survive. I really think that's why they're looting the planet the way that they are. They're just taking all that they can get their hands on in the way of stealing, and I think their idea is, well, we'll just take all of this stuff and take it down in the hole in the ground with us, and when this thing comes by and mankind's killed off, whatever's left, we'll come back up and set back up and take over and be rulers of the planet again. But I don't think it's going to work out that way. But they really don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care if the roads fall apart. They don't care if any of it, because they think it's going to be destroyed anyway.
Right. And that's why it's going to take the Lord to save us and restore order to all things and to bring judgment to all these people. I want to make mention again real quick, people, that September 19th, this particular object will be just 0.523 AU from the Earth. On September 26th, this thing will be 0.396 AU from the Earth. On October 2nd, it will be 0.316 AU from the Earth, this Elenin object. And then on October 17th, 0.23 AU from the Earth, astronomical unit. That will be the closest that it passes by, 21.57 million miles. On November 14th, the dwarf star crosses the Mars orbit and then is 0.46 AU from us and is supposed to move on out into space then. But the thing that they're not telling me, that the Kolbrin is telling us, and that the blue star, Hopi prophecy, red star, Kachina prophecy is telling us, is that there might be possibly something following Elenin, which would put it into a collision course trajectory with the Earth between this October 17th and November 14th timeline. So,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the entire event, because this as this thing comes in, as I understand it, it's got a miniature solar system with it, and we're going to go through the tail of that thing, and it's dragging a lot of debris. And I think that it's supposed to take between 7 and 10 years for the whole thing, the whole event, for it to come in and then come back around and go back out, and then the tail and all of that go back out with it. I think until it gets completely out, it's supposed to take 7 to a 10-year period for it to do all of that.
Yeah,
have you heard anything on that?
Interesting to me. Well, it's interesting to me that Hopi prophecy also talks about that, that this is the beginning of the 7 years of, some kind of weird tribulation, and that also, the Revelation 12, that sign of the Virgin clothed in the sun with the crown of 12 stars, the child in the womb, that is something that takes place September 23rd on the Feast of Trumpets in 2017. It's an astronomical alignment in the stars, and I'll talk about that too. But Roman, we'll have you on again in a week or so, brother, and we'll cover some more issues. But I appreciate everybody out there. I'm going to play a clip that's very important about the Pentagon and what they're expecting too. Please listen to this alongside
a number of things.
The doom-shaped call of the destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands whereabouts. In color it was bright and fiery, in appearance changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling in a pool from an underground supply, and all men agree it was a most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a lucent star, being more like a fiery body of flame. Its movement on high was slow, Below it swirled in the manner of smoke, and it remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. There was a bloody redness about it, which changed as it passed along its course. It caused death and destruction in its rising and setting. It swept the earth with gray cinder rain and caused many plagues, hunger, and other evils. It bit the skin of men and beasts until they became mottled with sores. The earth was troubled and shook. The hills and mountains moved and rocked. The dark, smoke-filled heavens bowed over earth, and a great howl came to the ears of men, borne to them upon the wings of the wind. It was the cry of the Dark Lord, the master of dread. Thick clouds of fiery smoke passed before him, and there was an awful hail of hot stones and coals of fire. The doom shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightning. The channels of water were turned back unto themselves when the land tilted, and great trees were tossed about and snapped like twigs. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard over the wilderness, and before its burning breath the flames parted. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony, and bright arrows of blood sped back and forth across its face. The earth swelled up like bread upon the hearth. This was the aspect of the doom shape called the Destroyer when it appeared in the days long gone by, in olden times. It is thus described in the old records, few of which remain. It is said that when it appears in the heavens above, the earth splits open from the heat like a nut roasted before the fire. Then flames shoot up through the surface and leap about like fiery fiends upon black blood. The moisture inside the land is all dried up. The pastures and cultivated places are consumed in flames, and they and all trees become white ashes. The doom shape is like a circling ball of flame which scatters small fiery offspring in its train. It covers out a fifth part of the sky and sends writhing snake-like fingers down to earth. Before it, the sky appears frightened, and it breaks up and scatters away. Midday is no brighter than night. It spawns a host of terrible things. These are things said of the Destroyer in the old records. Read them with a solemn heart, knowing that the doom shape has its appointed time and will return. It would be foolish to let them go unheeded. Now men say such things are not destined for our days. May the great God above grant that this be so, but come the day surely will, and in accordance with his nature, man will again be unprepared. That's from chapter 5, chapter 5. It's the Destroyer from the Kolbrin Bible. Part 3 from the Scroll of Adefa. So if you want to look it up for yourself, you can read it. But this is an old account of Nibiru and this particular other object, element, passing prior to the events of Moses' day when he led the people out of Egypt and the Red Sea was parted before him. And I did not have any idea that that Nibiru and Element were also part of that, and there's also reference to them being part of what had happened prior to the deluge of Noah's day. And so it's interesting to see that the Kolbrin attaches the same phenomena that we're dealing with in our heavens right now, because if you're not aware and if you haven't been notified of what's going on in our heavens, that the Lord said there will be signs in the heavens and the sun and the moon and the stars. Well, indeed, there are great signs and awesome things happening. There's in fact, this comet Elenin that is crossing the path of, and is crossing in front of us, and will cross in front of our orbit, the Earth's orbit, right before we actually cross over what would be the best trail of Elenin. And I know that our brother John the Baptist of Tribulation-Now.org, he's done a wonderful job in bringing you the timeline. He's done a lot of really good shows in bringing forth a lot of this information. But what is interesting in that, what is being talked about in the historical account, is that the phenomena that we're dealing with is in fact a dual phenomenon, and that when Elenin passes in front of us, that there could be another object trailing behind. And if that is the case, and that's what nobody is talking about, if no one is expecting, then there could be even more serious consequences than just going through the debris field of what would be comet Elenin. Because supposedly Nibiru is larger and also has moons with it, so who knows? But I want to introduce, I have a guest tonight, Roman White. He's a friend of ours, and he has his own radio show at libertyradio.com, and he does a show called The Seeds of Evil. I believe that's really, Roman, go ahead and give a shout out to the listening audience, and if you'll announce your show and tell people where they can find your work, and then we'll get into this topic.
Well, it's on truthradio.com Sunday night at 8 Central to 9:30, an hour and a half show.
All right, well, wonderful. Well, Roman and I have been introduced to each other because the Lord has kind of blessed us in the same discernment with the whole, what had happened in the garden and the connection with Cain and Lucifer and the whole enmity, Genesis chapter 3:15, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. He will actually be joining us as a guest for a 2-hour show in not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. And so we'll be going into some of those issues. But it's important for us this evening to bring forth the information that I'm going to be covering because I know just recently on Coast to Coast Radio, Linda Moulton Howe was on, and she was talking about several interviews that she had with NASA scientists that are just kind of blowing this whole thing off as, nothing to it, and that there's really no. And I pray that there is no cause for concern. I don't want to see, us having to go through anything traumatic, especially because so many, in my opinion, and I believe you probably agree with me, Roman, they're not ready. They're not ready to meet their Maker. They're not ready for the harvest and salvation and judgment and all that entails. Because those are some very serious and heavy-duty issues, and most people are still in denial about the state of America and our financial standing and our ability to even pay our own bills. I mean, the day of reckoning is coming in so many ways. But what we're dealing with in the heavens, with this being of a cosmic nature, this affects us all very profoundly, no matter where we live or which part of the country, which part of the world you're listening to and tuning in from. Excuse me. And nobody's speaking about the possibility that something could be trailing Elenin. And what is interesting to me also is the discovery of the blue star, red star Hopi prophecy. And for those that have not heard of this, or we're going to read it for you, and I'm going to get Roman to comment on it, because this is a very interesting prophecy. And just to give you a little bit of background on it, it was actually brought forth by a Robert Morningsky Ghostwolf, I believe is his name. And he had come on Art Bell's program, and I think this was in 1998. And this was also after the publication of his book called Last Cry. And in that book, he published this particular prophecy that we're going to bring forth, because it talks about this phenomena as being, something of a dual nature again. And they talked about the terrible twins one being the purifier, and interestingly enough, the other being the destroyer, which is exactly what the Kolbrin Bible references this particular object as well. And I also have been recently, I sent out a quote and I read earlier from the Kolbrin Bible about the destruction of the First World Age, where I read a quote about the sky monster, one following closely after the other.